All right, guys, welcome to the Digital Barbell Podcast. Thanks for being here. My life has greatly improved since not announcing the episode number on all these podcasts. I don't have to look up what number we're on and then try to remember it. It's a whole thing.
I'm happy for you.
I mean, I'm a new man.
Who knows
over
what
here.
number we're on now?
All right, so apologies in advance if there's extra dog noises in this episode. There's a lot of dogs running around in this office, and they all have jingly collars on. But let's get into this episode. I think we're going to do Q&A today.
Yeah.
We got several questions, and one other thing we're kind of riff on before we get into the Q&As. But I don't have a sponsor this week. Do you?
They've been contacting me lately.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's good.
I feel pretty
What do we
special
got?
about it. The sponsor this week is the OXO brand cold brew coffee maker in the compact size. It's very specific.
Why?
I mean, you hear us talk a lot about how we make our coffee. We use the cold brew system where you take all your grounds and you let it soak for 24 hours, and then you have concentrate, and then we heat up our water, and that's how we drink our coffee.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're pretty ridiculous right now. He's got his own caffeinated kind in his decaf. I have my own decaf, and I'm about to get my own caffeinated kind. So we've currently going to have 4 coffees in the refrigerator. But anyway, we've had the toddy system for a while. And by accident, we ordered the compact size of the OXO last time we were taking a camping trip to Idaho because we ran out of coffee. And this thing is fantastic. I mean, we're partial to the toddy system because we actually know the grandson of the guy who invented it. So I'm like, yeah, go toddy. But this thing is far superior. It's super easy to use. You don't have to have filters or plugs. It has a proprietary bottle that you just snap it on and it drains into it, wash it out, and go.
It's quite a commercial you just gave there.
OXO, send them my way. I actually just bought a second one because I'm going to have one for my decaf and one for the regular.
Yeah, it doesn't really work for me because the quantity, the small one you're talking about, the compact, only makes 2 to 3 days worth of coffee. And I don't want to be making coffee every 2
if I
to
could
3
put in
days.
a request, I would ask for them to make that exact model, but in the bigger size.
Because when you go up to the large one, the
It's
technology changes.
a big device that you put on your countertop, which I'm not sure why, but
Yeah, maybe the weight of the big one will be too much to it would
I don't
crush
know.
the
It's the same
carafe.
as the top. Anyway, the OXO cold brew coffee maker in the compact size,
Link in bio.
highly
Use-
recommend.
Use discount code
It has
Blakely.
this cool little thing you put on top and you run the water over. So because that's all part of the process is you want to not just dump water, but you want to sprinkle water. So it's it's like a
It disperses the water over the coffee grounds.
like a thing with holes in it, like a water.
A diffuser,
I'm
like a
thinking
watering
about
can.
a water. Yes, like a watering can
Yeah.
in reverse.
Okay, we spent way too much time giving
Dude.
them credit. They really need to give us something.
All right, here we go. We've got some great questions. First one. I gained some weight over the holidays. I didn't put too much emphasis on it because I knew I was eating more and training less. After the holidays, I pretty much went back to my normal eating and training routine. I didn't cut calories or train more. I expected to level out a bit by now, but my weight in inches are still up around where they were at the beginning of the year. Any advice to help me get back on track?
All right, this is a good one, and I think it's probably a pretty common one with a lot of people picking up a few pounds over the holidays, going back to their normal routine, but their weight doesn't go back to where they were. So here's what's happening. What actually happened was over the holidays when you were eating more and training less, you were in a calorie surplus and your body stored those extra calories as body fat. Mm-hmm. Now, I think we're only talking about a few pounds here, so not much effect to your overall maintenance calories because, 3 pounds, 5 pounds isn't a lot of weight gain. But what happens when you go back to eating your normal number of calories is you will now just maintain the weight that you gained. So what it would take to actually lose the weight that you gained over the holidays is to deliberately go into a calorie deficit from the normal amount you normally eat to lose that fat that you gained over the holidays. So what I would do is go to step 3 of our nutrition freedom framework, which is the dialing it in phase. And I would track your food pretty accurately for 1 week in MyFitnessPal. I would look at how many calories you're eating as an average over the week. And then I would take 15% right off the top, keeping your protein right around 1 gram per pound of your body weight right now. And I would see after you remove those 15% of calories, how your weight trends over the next month. I would be willing to bet that the weight that you gained over the holidays comes off in 4 to 6 weeks. And then you can bring your calories back up 15% to your maintenance calories, and that extra weight will be gone.
This is great awareness too, because I think that this happens to a lot of people, and it is only a few pounds, and you don't really think about it in that moment. But this can happen year after year after year when we do go into these large surpluses and then just level off to exactly where we were. And then we do that, repeat that 1 or 2 times a year, every year.
Yeah, this is different than the fluctuations you see from day to day after a big meal. You could eat a big meal late at night and you might weigh 3 pounds more the next day. That's not the same as eating a little bit more over the course of 2 weeks around the holidays. When you have one big meal, your body has ways to deal with those extra calories over the next couple of days. It'll subconsciously make you move around more, wiggle your arms, have a better workout. Maybe you'll walk a little bit more. You'll actually burn off a lot of those calories and maybe store some of them as fat, but it's not going to be the same thing as if you chronically overeat a little bit for a week, 2 weeks at a time. Those fluctuations don't go away without a dedicated time of being in a calorie deficit. So I think that's what happened, and I think that's how you need to fix it if you want to.
Yep. All right. Second one. I keep having random injuries pop up, and it's been super frustrating and hard to stay consistent. What is the best way to work through the pain?
Just no pain, no gain, baby. You just got to push through.
I think this is, you have a lot of, I would say, random injuries pop up. Yours tend to...
How rude.
Yours tend to be, I would say, tendinitis related.
Yeah, so historically speaking.
Yes.
All right, so I guess the first piece of advice is have somebody check your form. Whatever things seem to be bothering you, get somebody to look at how you're doing them and make sure you're doing them relatively correctly and there's not some obvious thing you're doing that's creating pain. Send us a video if you don't have somebody else to check your form. Number 2, how's your recovery? How much are you sleeping? How much are you eating? Are you eating enough protein? If you don't give your body the nutrients, the fuel that it needs to repair itself.
And the recovery and the sleep.
Yeah, I think I said that. But I mean, you can't expect to stay healthy and perform well and remain injury-free if you're not putting in the work into your recovery. I wish it was true. Millions of people are out there trying it on a daily basis, but it's the part we neglect. But that is important. If you're not recovering, you're always going to be dealing with these little injuries. Number 3 is I would look at the total amount of exercise volume you're doing across the different muscle groups and across the different joints of your body. Is there one particular joint that you keep hurting? Is there one particular muscle group that you always seem to strain? Maybe you're doing too much total for that area, or maybe you're just doing too much too soon. Yeah. Like when we interviewed Will Morris for the podcast, he talked about how so many people at the beginning of the year in their, kick off the new year weight loss journey go from 0 running to running several miles per week. And it's not the fact that running 3 or 5 miles per week is necessarily a bad thing. People do that all the time and remain injury free. You okay?
Gosh.
Swallow wrong?
Yeah.
But going from being sedentary and not running at all to running 3-5 miles per week, that's a nagging injury waiting to happen. So it could be just that you're trying to do too much too soon. Even if the total volume is fine, you just did too much volume for where your recovery is at right now, your adaptation.
Yeah. And so then the last piece, I would say instead of trying to work through the pain, I would try to work around the pain, meaning you've already done a form check. You know that you're moving correctly. You've got your recovery in check. You've got your volume in check. Now, if you need to work around the pain, it's doing something like if it's a knee pain, you're squatting to a target in the beginning. And that will both make sure that your form is great and that you're limiting that range of motion. And then over time, you're taking away the target and adding more range of motion until you get back to full. You can do this for any movement.
And modifying the load that you're doing it with too.
Yeah.
Like if deadlifts are what seems to be hurting you right now and you're used to deadlifting 3 sets of 5 at 225, let's go back to 185 and see how you feel. And then titrate the load up slowly as your body adapts.
Yep.
This is basically the procedure that I just went through over the last 8 months with my left shoulder, not being able to bench press an empty barbell without severe shoulder pain to, coming within 5 pounds of my all-time PR yesterday.
Wow.
Following that exact procedure. So there is hope. Try not to get discouraged and check all those other things that we mentioned.
Speaking of shoulder pain, number 3, I've been dealing with shoulder impingement. How can I modify my training?
Yeah. Shoulder impingement is a tricky thing. It's basically a diagnosis that the doctor might give you that could potentially mean a lot of different things. I want to link to a 3-part article that Barbell Medicine put out about shoulder impingement. It's way more than we could go into in this podcast, and I would consider them extreme experts in this, but we do have some experience with it. So the first thing I would say is be careful with accepting that diagnosis of shoulder impingement as some kind of death sentence or as your identity now. Like, I know that might sound kind of woo-woo, but taking that on and be like, I'm somebody with shoulder impingement. I'm just, I'm always going to struggle with.
Or I'm somebody with a bad back, or whatever it is.
So watch out for that. Maybe that's not the answer you were expecting, but in that article, they actually talk about the role that doctors have in diagnosing people specifically with shoulder impingement and the words that they use to tell them what's wrong with them. Oh, your subacromial space will never be the same. Oh, I've never seen tendons this inflamed. Like, oh man, it's like, that matters. The way that the words that you use, the words that you get from your doctor, and the way that you perceive your injury, especially shoulder injuries, is a big predictor of how you will come back from that injury. So like I said, maybe not the answer you were expecting, but as far as modifying your training for whatever shoulder pain that you're having, go back to the last question, honestly, and do all those kinds of things.
So form check, making sure that your form is in check and all those movements, making sure that you're getting your recovery and checking out your overall volume.
And you're hearing this from somebody who did all this the wrong way. Like, I've had a cortisone shot in at least this shoulder, if not that one. I've thought that my shoulder was just going to be broken forever, and I was probably going to have surgery.
You thought you had frozen shoulder at some point, whatever that means.
Right. Yeah. So be careful about how you approach this, and just take a common sense approach to rehabbing it like you would any other injury, is what we're trying to say.
Yep. All right. How important is it for me to hit my micronutrients if I'm hitting my macronutrients?
This was a good question from a nutrition coaching client. So in case you don't know, macronutrients are protein, carbs, fat, and alcohol. Micronutrients are all the vitamins and minerals, way too many to list off here. Now, I think the reason that she was thinking this was, even though at the time she didn't have targets for protein, carbs, and fat, she was probably putting some food in MyFitnessPal, and they have the tab in there that breaks out how many micronutrients you're getting to, and they have a little bar graph. And I actually don't know where they get the targets for those, because some of them are kind of weird, and we don't prescribe our clients a certain number of micronutrients to eat. So the way that I like to think about micronutrients is, don't assume that you're deficient in anything without going to your doctor and getting a blood test to see if you have a deficiency. So many commercials out there for athletic greens and vitamins for this. You don't need to supplement anything in your nutrition that you're not deficient in. So just skip that, go straight to your doctor, find out if there's something that you're lacking, and then address that with a nutritional approach if you can, or a supplement. But the best way to cover your bases isn't by taking a multivitamin that doesn't give you the benefits of actually eating food that are rich in micronutrients. It's by having a diverse diet with 5 to 7 servings of different fruits and vegetables per day. It's by mixing up your sources of protein, having some seafood, having red meat, having lean poultry, having eggs. That's the best way to cover your bases instead of just like going straight to a multivitamin. But the gold standard is to find out if you're deficient in something, and then address it with your nutrition and supplementation if needed.
Yep. Perfect. All right. The first 2 weeks of my diet, I lost 5 pounds. I haven't changed anything since, but for the last 5 weeks, I've only been losing about 3/4 of a pound per week.
It's a lot of math.
Should I lower my calories?
There's a lot of math in this question.
All right. So first 2 weeks, 5 pounds were lost. And then now for the last 5 weeks, only about 3/4 of a pound per week has been lost.
So basically, like, things were just humming right along the first 2 weeks, and now it probably feels like things have come to a grinding halt. So this is a really common thing, and it is super discouraging, especially if you've never filled your brain with educational content that's more like common sense and research-based, and followed accounts that just keep preaching the basics.
Yeah.
But here's what happened. When you started your diet, you probably cut way back on processed carbohydrates. You probably cut back on just the total amount of food that you were eating. Maybe you even started eating like more high volume foods that, just a little bit like more like spinachy and leafy greens that they're not very heavy. So what that means is you just literally have less food volume in your stomach when you get up in the morning and step on the scale. Well, guess what? That affects your body weight. And that doesn't really have anything to do with whether you have less or more fat on your body. It just means the contents of your stomach are less. So you weigh less. So that's one factor that causes people to see a lot of initial progress when they start a diet. Number two, as I mentioned, that you probably cut out a lot of highly processed carbs. That could be crackers, that could be tortilla chips, that could be ice cream. So what happens when you start depleting your body of carbohydrates is you start to dump out some of the glycogen, which is stored carbohydrates in your muscle and liver. You burn what you have already stored up as energy, and you're not really replenishing it because you're not eating as many carbs. So not only have you lost that glycogen, but you've lost a lot of water weight along with it. This is why the jumping on keto or carnivore or one of the super low carb diets is so rewarding on the mindset side when you first start, because you see that really encouraging progress right off the start. It's working, and it encourages you to keep going. But then once you're down to a more baseline level of stored glycogen and muscle and food content in your stomach in the morning, now we're starting to get into the point where we're seeing how much fat we're losing if we're consistent. So I think she said that she was down to a rate of 3/4 pound per week. That's amazing progress. So even though you felt like you were crushing it in the beginning, you're actually crushing it now. Yeah. If you can stay consistent with what you're doing and continue to lose 3/4 pound per week, that's amazing progress. Absolutely do not lower your calories. And even beyond that, I would recommend you start planning to take a break from your diet before you start to deal with hunger or before you start to get mentally burnt out of the process of dieting. Like, maintain some of this great progress that you've made, instill the habits that got you there, and then go back down to where you're losing that 3/4 pound again.
Yeah, that's great.
Kudos to you.
Yeah, you're losing weight every week. Amazing. That's
yeah.
Great. All right. You guys posted a video of a client using a deadlift bar where he was standing in the center of it. What is that all about?
I love it. I like this one.
All right. That is a trap bar.
Otherwise known as a hex bar.
Yes. So you are standing inside of it. There's a bar, like it's not a square.
Why is it called a trap?
Because you're trapped inside of it.
Is it really?
I mean, that's what I would say. Like, you're trapped.
Trapezoid? Is that a trapezoid?
I don't know.
How many sides are on a trapezoid?
Oh, yeah, there are 6 sides.
Is there?
Because it goes like...
Yes, 3 in the front.
3 in the front, 3 in the back.
Is that a trapezoid? 6? Or that's a hexagon?
I don't know.
We'll cut this part out.
Embarrassing me.
I don't know the answer.
You're standing in the center of the bar.
Yes.
And then the weights are loaded on each side. And what this does is it allows, instead of the weight potentially coming out in front of you, you're deadlifting it pretty much, you're almost like squatting the weight off the ground, and you're able to stay right in the center. So people who have potentially like back issues sometimes will use these because they are a little bit more forgiving on the back, because the weight cannot get out in front of you in these.
It kind of turns your deadlift into a more quad dominant deadlift. Mm-hmm. I would argue though that if you think that you can't deadlift conventionally with a straight bar, and you have to use a hex bar, I bet we can fix up your form so you can deadlift with in a conventional bar. But that being said, I do have clients that we do use the hex bar for their own personal preference. There's not really one that's right or wrong. They're both great tools to have in the toolbox. I will say we don't have a trap bar. Have you ever noticed how much room they take up?
Yeah.
That is a big investment of space in your gym. So if you want to try one, go for it. There's nothing magical about them. It's just a variation that some people prefer.
Yeah, and I know that the client that they're talking about, he's a client of ours that's in his 70s, and I'm fine with him using that trap bar because it helps protect his back and make sure that he's right in the center.
You know, one thing that's cool about the trap bars I just thought about is some of them have raised handles. Like you don't have to actually get down as low. So somebody who struggles with getting in the bottom position of a deadlift for their hamstring flexibility, or that's what causes them back pain, maybe that's a good variation for them.
Yep. All right. I know I should be lifting heavy if I want to build muscle, but I'm a small female and I'm really afraid to look bulky. What should I change about my workouts?
We have a whole podcast about this.
Yeah.
It says women should lift weights, something like that. I'll link to that in the show notes.
I don't know what this person does for their workouts.
Yeah.
If they're doing digital barbell workouts, they should change nothing, because bulky is coming from mostly how you eat. not the training
Yeah.
that you do. There is something to, like, some people just put on muscle a little bit easier
Yeah,
than
they're hyper
others.
responders.
But there could be also something in their diet they could be eating in a surplus.
But saying you're a hyper responder and you're just going to get bulky is like saying I can't lose weight because I have a slow metabolism.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean like there's nothing inherently that's going to like make you do anything without the stimulus.
Right.
It's just the approach that you have to take might be a little bit different than
Yeah.
some people. I would say like it is, as a small female, they didn't say how tall they are, but
Mm-hmm.
You're probably more at risk to look bulky just because you're a smaller person. And also you probably survive on less calories than a taller woman. So like it's probably easier for you to overeat calories because you don't need a lot of calories
Yeah.
in the first place,
And then add that in the weight training, and you're going to be putting on some muscle.
Right. So all that to say, like you said, the number one thing you have to do to avoid getting bulky is pay extra attention to your diet. You do need to build muscle, so you need to make sure you're eating enough calories. But if you're eating in a calorie surplus and you're training, that's the recipe to put on excess body fat. So you got to be extra careful about what you eat. And then the number two thing is, what area of your body are you worried about getting too bulky?
Yeah.
Well, let's look at your training and make sure that we're not doing too much volume on those particular muscle groups. If you don't want broad shoulders, then we need to watch how many things we're doing, like overhead pressing and lateral raises. Like we just, the number one driver of, not the number one driver, a main driver of muscle hypertrophy is the total volume that you do. So maybe we give a little bit less love to the muscles that you're afraid of looking bulky.
Yeah, and some of the times that you see bulky looking women, I don't know where you're seeing this, like, for example, watching the CrossFit Games, if you think these women look over muscled or are bulky, they are training pretty much for their job.
Yeah.
Several hours a day, several times a day, and they are eating in the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of calories.
They are
a
trying
day.
to get
They
bulky.
are trying to get bulky. I would say the average woman CrossFitter, I think they say it's like a 5'5" is the average height for a women's CrossFitter. And at 5'5", if you put on quite a bit of, if you're 5'5" and you're weighing like in that 140 range, you're going to have a lot of muscle mass because you're going to be pretty lean, and you're going to, I would say, look what some people would consider bulky.
I would even say some of those women weigh 155, 160 and are lean. But anyway, two main drivers: don't eat too much and don't train too much in the muscle groups that you're worried about looking bulky.
All right.
That's it.
That's it.
We got one more thing we want to talk about that came up last night. We're doubling down on our YouTube content. Number one, we've already talked about that. If you don't already subscribe to our YouTube channel, what in the world are you doing? Head over there and subscribe now. We're putting out interviews with clients, educational content, fun content, camper content. But anyway, we've been watching more YouTube channels, just trying to get ideas for content, look how videos are produced. And we were watching somebody last night, and she's a content creator full time, and she edits all of her own videos. It's a ton of work, and she was just burnt out on it. So she went away on a 2-week vacation to, quote, unwind, recharge. What are some of the other words people use? Reset.
Get refreshed.
So that she would come back from the trip and be super fired up to get back to shooting and editing. And what did she say when she got back home?
She had zero motivation to get back into the editing. That whole first several days was a struggle bus to get back in the routine. I think we get examples of this in our life all the time, of holidays, Christmas break, extra long weekends. How hard is it to get up that Monday after a break to, it sounds like the alarm goes off way too early. We have no motivation at work. We just feel like we're spinning our wheels and we can't get going. Why is that?
It's because this whole idea of unplugging, recharging, building up motivation by just taking a break and doing whatever, it doesn't work. Like, you crush the inertia that you have, you crush the momentum that you have, and it makes it 10 times harder to get going than if you would have just practiced something is better than nothing and kept some semblance of the habit alive.
Yeah, that's why we encourage our clients who do go on vacations to just take 20 minutes and do a little band workout, do just a body weight workout, just to keep that momentum going while they're away. What is it? Inertia is an object in motion stays in motion.
And an object at rest tends to stay at rest. You're going to have to push that rock even harder to get it rolling than if you had just kept it rolling a little bit. You could have built up some speed with much less effort.
Yeah.
Let's recap the cycle of how motivation is built. Motivation is only built by taking action. Those actions produce results. Those results motivate you to take more action.
And as we all know, we can't wait for motivation to strike until we start something.
That's right. So if you are feeling tempted to just stop your healthy eating for a week to reset and build up motivation, if you're feeling tempted to take 2 weeks off of the gym to just reset and recharge and get ready to get fired up, please, please, please keep doing something. Trust us. It'll be so much easier to start if you don't ever stop.
I made a killer drink, I just have to point out, with my OXO cold
I mean,
brew
I was expecting you
coffee.
to that was a great point,
was
Jonathan. Woo,
I'm
drop
just-
the mic.
I've never made this before. It's almond milk. It's some cold brew OXO decaf and protein powder, and it's delicious.
If you say so, make me one and I'll give it a shot. Maybe
right.
they'll sponsor next week's episode. This drink. All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed this Q&A. If you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to subscribe before you leave. And if you're listening to this in one of the apps like Spotify or Apple, we would be greatly appreciative if you would leave us a rating before you leave. It really helps us reach more people. Have a good day.